My name is Nessa Holt. I'm 29 years old. On the night my daughter took her first steps, someone broke into our home and put my husband in the hospital. 2 weeks later, when he finally woke up, the first thing he said wasn't my name. It was a warning. And when I found out who was behind it, I couldn't breathe. Because it wasn't a stranger. Before I tell you who it was, make sure to like and subscribe to Past Stories and drop your country in the comments below. Now let me tell you what really happened. My daughter Rosie had just turned 11 months old. 11 months of sleepless nights, of learning how to be a mother, of watching my husband hold her like she was the most precious thing he had ever seen. She was. She still is. That evening, I had her in the living room on the playmat. My husband, Callum, I should say, just my husband, he was in the kitchen finishing dinner. The smell of garlic and olive oil was drifting through the whole apartment. It was one of those ordinary Tuesday nights that you never think to save. You never think you'll need to remember it. Rosie was holding onto the edge of the coffee table. She'd been doing that for weeks, pulling herself up, wobbling, sitting back down. And then, out of nowhere, she just let go. 3 tiny steps. Her arms out to the sides, her face completely serious, like she was concentrating with everything she had. I screamed, not from fear, from joy. My husband came running out of the kitchen still holding a wooden spoon. What? What happened? And I pointed at Rosie, who had already plopped herself back down on the mat and was looking at us both like she couldn't understand why we were making such a big deal. He dropped to his knees right there on the floor and started clapping. "That's our girl," he said. His voice cracked a little. Just a little. We ordered dessert from the bakery down the street to celebrate. Ridiculous, I know. She was 11 months old. She didn't even know what was happening. But we needed to mark it somehow. We needed to say, this moment matters. Later that night, after Rosie was down and the apartment was quiet, my husband said he was going to take out the trash and grab the packages that had been sitting in the lobby. It was late, almost 10, but our building had a secure entrance and we'd never had a problem before. He kissed me on the forehead before he left. He smelled like the soap he always used, cedar and something clean. "I'll be right back," he said. He wasn't right back. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. I texted him. No reply. I told myself he'd probably run into a neighbor, gotten caught in a conversation the way he always did. My husband was the kind of person people stopped in hallways. Strangers told him their problems. He had that face, open, patient, trustworthy. At 45 minutes, I put Rosie in the carrier and went downstairs myself. I found him in the stairwell between the lobby and the basement. He was on the floor. There was blood on the side of his head and his eyes were closed and he wasn't moving, and I don't fully remember the next few minutes. I remember screaming. I remember Rosie starting to cry against my chest. I remember the super coming out of his apartment because of the noise. I remember the ambulance. I don't remember the ride to the hospital. I don't remember who took Rosie from me. I just remember the waiting room and the fluorescent lights, and a doctor eventually sitting down across from me and saying words I could only partially process. Blunt force. Trauma, swelling in the brain, induced coma. We won't know more until. I didn't sleep that night. Or the next one. My husband's parents flew in the following morning. My mother drove up from Virginia and took Rosie so I could be at the hospital. Friends came. People brought food. Everyone said the same things people say when they don't know what else to do. He's strong. He'll pull through. You have to stay positive. The police came on the second day. They said the security camera in the stairwell had been spray painted over sometime that afternoon. Before it happened, they said it wasn't random. The positioning of the attack, where it happened, when it happened, suggested someone knew his routine. I sat there in that hospital chair and I just stared at the officer. "What do you mean, knew his routine?" I asked. He looked at me carefully. "We're looking into it," he said. "We just want to make sure you're aware this may not have been a random incident." Not random. 2 words that changed the entire shape of everything. I started going back through everything in my head. Who would want to hurt him? My husband was an architect. He coached youth soccer on Saturday mornings. He remembered everyone's birthday. He had no enemies. He had no conflicts. He had nothing that anyone would want to take from him. Or so I thought. On the fifth day, the police called. They had a suspect. A man had been picked up 2 neighborhoods over, and when they searched his car, they found a prepaid phone with a single text thread on it. Instructions. The time my husband usually took out the trash. The fact that he always used the side stairwell because the elevator was slow. The door code to our building. Whoever sent those instructions knew us, not just of us. They knew us. I asked the officer if I could see the man. He said not yet. He wasn't cooperating. They were still working on building the case. Not cooperating, I repeated. He's not talking, the officer said. But we have enough physical evidence to hold him. It's the person who hired him we need to find. Hired him. I drove home that night and sat in Rosie's room while she slept. I watched her breathe. In and out. In and out. 11 months old, and the world had already gotten so much more dangerous than I knew. I tried to think. Really think. Who had access to that information? The building code had been shared with only a handful of people. Our families. 2 close friends. My husband's colleague who had watched Rosie once. And my best friend. My best friend since college. The person who had been my maid of honor. Who had been in the delivery room when Rosie was born. Who knew every detail of our lives because I had trusted her with every detail of our lives. I pushed the thought away. It was insane. It was grief making me paranoid. It had to be someone else. My husband woke up on day 14. I was there when it happened. I was sitting in the chair next to his bed, half asleep, when I heard him make a sound. I grabbed his hand. His eyes opened slowly. He looked at the ceiling for a long moment, then turned his head and looked at me. "Hey," I whispered. My voice came out broken. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "Is Rosie? She's fine. She's perfect. She's at my mom's." He closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them again, they were clearer. "Nessa." He squeezed my hand. Who knew about the stairwell? I went still. What? Someone was waiting for me. His voice was rough, slow. They knew exactly where I'd be. I stared at him. My heart was hammering. "The police are already, think," he said. He wasn't panicking. He was calm in that way that was more frightening than panic. "Who did you tell about my routine?" "The stairwell. The trash. All of it." I ran through the list in my head out loud. His parents. My mother. Our friends. My best friend. He didn't react to most of the names. But when I said her name, when I said my best friend's name, something crossed his face. Something I didn't have a word for. "What?" I asked. "What is it?" He was quiet for a moment. Then, a few months ago, before this, I ran into her at the coffee shop near my office. "Okay." She said something. I didn't think anything of it at the time. He paused. "She said she'd always thought you deserved better than me." I blinked. "She said that to you?" She laughed it off. Said she was joking? He looked at me. "I didn't tell you because I thought it was nothing. I thought she was just being, I don't know, protective." I sat with that for a long time. My best friend and I had been close since our sophomore year of college. She had been there for everything. She was funny, loyal, one of the sharpest people I'd ever known. She had always had a difficult relationship with her own life. A string of jobs that didn't fit, a relationship that ended badly, a move to a city she ended up hating. But she had always shown up for me. Always. Or that's what I thought she was doing. I thought about the past few years, how she'd been quieter since Rosie was born, how she sometimes made comments, small ones easily dismissed, about how lucky I was, how easy my life looked from the outside, how she'd wanted a baby too once, how she'd wanted a husband who looked at her the way mine looked at me. I thought I'd been a good friend to her through all of it. I thought I had listened, showed up, made space. I thought we were okay. I called her the next morning. I kept my voice even. I asked if she wanted to come to the hospital now that he was awake. She said of course, she'd be there in an hour. She never came. Instead, 40 minutes after I called her, the police called me. They had connected the prepaid phone to a second number. That number had made calls to a disposable voicemail system. And through a combination of cell tower data and records the detective called a lucky break, they had traced the second number to a specific location, a coffee shop 2 blocks from my best friend's apartment, at the exact time the first instructions were sent. They brought her in for questioning that afternoon. I asked if I could come. They said I could wait outside. I sat in that waiting room for 2 hours. My husband's parents were with him at the hospital. My mother still had Rosie. I was completely alone in a police station, staring at the floor, trying to make the pieces fit in some other way. Any other way. When the detective finally came out, her face told me everything before she said a word. "She's talking," she said. My throat closed. "And?" The detective sat down across from me. She spoke carefully, and I heard every word, but it was like hearing them through water. She had found the man through a contact from a previous job. She had provided my husband's schedule. She had provided the building code. She had transferred money from an account she'd opened under a fake name 3 months earlier. She had planned this for months. "Why?" I asked. It came out like a whisper. The detective hesitated. She said a lot of things. She paused. She said she felt like she'd been watching your life from the outside for years, and that watching you have everything she wanted, the husband, the baby, the stability, she said it felt like being erased. I pressed my hands flat on my knees to stop them from shaking. She said she didn't want him dead, the detective continued. She said she only wanted him. I'm sorry, I'm just telling you what she said. She only wanted him out of the picture. She thought if he was gone, you'd fall apart. You'd need her. You'd finally need her the way she needed you. I couldn't speak. She said she loved you, the detective said, in her own way. She said this whole thing was about love. I stood up. I walked to the window. Outside, it was a regular afternoon. People on the sidewalk, a bus going by, a kid on a bike. The world is continuing as if nothing had happened. I had been friends with her for 9 years. I had told her about my first date with my husband. I had called her crying when I got the positive pregnancy test because I was scared, and she was the first person I wanted to hear her voice. She had held Rosie in the hospital 12 minutes after she was born, and she had paid someone to put my husband in a coma. I don't have a clean way to describe what happened inside me in that moment. It wasn't just grief, and it wasn't just rage. It was something older and more disorienting than either. The feeling of looking at a photo and realizing the person standing next to you was wearing a mask the whole time. I asked the detective if I could leave. She said yes. I went back to the hospital. I sat next to my husband's bed and I held his hand and I told him everything. He didn't say anything for a long time when I finished. Just looked at the ceiling. "You okay?" he finally asked. Not about himself, about me. That's the kind of person he is. That has always been the kind of person he is. And she couldn't stand it. She couldn't stand that I had him and that I knew it and that I was happy. She was charged 2 weeks later. The man she hired had already entered a plea agreement and agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. There was enough evidence. The financial records, the phone data, the testimony that her attorney advised her not to fight it. She pled guilty to conspiracy to commit assault and several related charges. She was sentenced to 11 years. I was in the courtroom when they read the sentence. She turned and looked at me before they took her out. I don't know what I expected. Some last flash of the person I thought I knew. Some crack in the surface. But her face was just still. Like she had already gone somewhere I couldn't follow. I looked away first. My husband came home 6 weeks after he woke up. He still has headaches sometimes. He gets tired more easily than he used to. The doctors say most of it will resolve with time, but some of it might just be the new normal. We're learning what that means. Rosie is 14 months old now. She walks everywhere. She is completely fearless in the way that babies are fearless. She doesn't know yet that the world has edges. We're trying to make sure she has as much time as possible before she has to learn that. I still think about my best friend sometimes. I don't miss her. I know that sounds like something I should feel guilty about, but I don't. What I miss is who I thought she was. The version of her I believed in for 9 years. That person doesn't exist and maybe never did, and that particular grief doesn't have a name yet. My husband and I don't talk about it every day. Some weeks we don't talk about it at all. But it's there, underneath everything. The way a scar sits underneath a sleeve. You know it's there, even when no one can see it. What I know now, that I didn't know before, is this. The people who smile at your happiness from the closest distance are sometimes the ones who are the most broken by it. Not because you did anything wrong, not because you owe them anything, but because pain that goes unseen long enough starts to rot, and eventually it looks for somewhere to go. I didn't deserve what happened. My husband didn't deserve it. Rosie didn't deserve to spend the first weeks she could walk without her father in the house. But we're still here, all three of us, and some days, that's the whole story.